Now, turning our attention to Britain, Prime Minister Boris Johnson's Brexit plans could get another boost. Mr. Johnson reportedly plans to add a clause to the Brexit Bill to ensure that the UK will leave the European Union next year. The Brexit transition period will also not run beyond 2020.
Well, just hours ago, Mr. Johnson held his first cabinet meeting since his Conservative Party swept to a landslide victory on Thursday's general election. He told his new government that the first 100 days will be very busy and that much work needs to be done. Now, for more, Ollie Barrett joins us from London on this. Ollie, tell us more about this new withdrawal agreement bill.
Well, it's based on the deal that Boris Johnson has already reached with the European Union, but which he couldn't get through the House of Commons before the general election. One change that is being added to it is that he is inserting into it a clause which will make it illegal, effectively, for Parliament to delay the Brexit process towards the end of next year. So this will mean that the timeline will become that Britain leaves the European Union on January the 31st, and then a trade deal will need to be done by the end of next year, and there will be no extension to the transition period that Britain will be in 2020. So that is the timeline as it stands. Boris Johnson clearly wanting to live up to the pledge that he made during the election campaign to get Brexit done. During that campaign, many of his critics said Brexit wouldn't be done by January the 31st because the real work would be in reaching a trade deal with the European Union. Well, now Boris Johnson insisting that all of that can be achieved by the end of next year.
Ollie, how's the European Union and European leaders likely to react to that statement of having a hard, definitive date at the end of 2020?
Well, in one sense, there is some concern in Brussels because officials there believe that reaching a trade deal with the United Kingdom will take much more than a year. At the same time, there are European leaders and European officials who are very pleased about the fact that Boris Johnson has won a majority because at least it injects some certainty into proceedings. It also means that when they are negotiating with Boris Johnson over a trade deal, they know that he has the numbers back here in London in the House of Commons to actually deliver on what gets agreed. So mixed feelings, I think, in Brussels. One possibility is that what we see by the end of next year is not a fully fledged trade deal with the European Union, but a bare bones type of arrangement with some further work to be done. That would allow Boris Johnson to say, we are not extending the Brexit process, we have a deal in place with the European Union, but we can continue negotiations to make it a much broader agreement. That is one of the scenarios that we are now looking at, because, as I say, officials in Brussels don't believe that you can reach an ambitious, all-encompassing trade deal by the end of 2020.
Well, the House of Commons resumes today. Do we know what's going to be on the agenda?
Yeah, there's all sorts of boring logistics for the new intake of MPs, having things like their laptops given to them for the parliamentary estate, their security protocols. They'll be given guided tours of the Palace of Westminster. We're also seeing MPs now being sworn in. We're seeing the election of the Speaker of the House of Commons. Of course, John Bercow has left that post, having become something of a global celebrity through the Brexit process. The new Speaker will be re-elected later today. And then what we see is the Queen's speech on Thursday, when she will set out her government's legislative agenda, which will clearly mirror much of what Boris Johnson campaigned upon heading into this winning of the significant majority that he now has. And then on Friday, we will see debate and voting on Boris Johnson's withdrawal agreement bill, and that does set in stone the idea that Britain is going to leave the European Union on January the 31st.